At 74, I thought I had everything figured out. Years of hard work, sacrifice, and struggle had led me to this moment, retirement, the reward for a lifetime of effort. But that night, my world began to crumble. The celebration I had planned to mark the end of one chapter became the beginning of a nightmare. It was supposed to be my night of triumph, but instead, it was the night I realized that betrayal was much closer to home than I ever imagined. Before we begin, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you never miss a story like this. Now, let's dive into it. I had waited my entire life for this moment. I was finally about to step away from the empire I had built, piece by piece, over decades of sweat, sacrifice, and relentless work. The dinner was supposed to be a celebration, a mark of an era closing and a new one beginning. The guests filled the room with laughter, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of chandeliers, and the air was thick with congratulations. My daughter Claire was there, beaming with pride, my grandchildren running around the room, and Derek, my son-in-law, standing by my side, quiet as usual, but always with that sharp, calculating look in his eyes. The night felt surreal. I had never imagined that, after everything, I would get this moment of respite. No more meetings, no more long hours at the office. Just the feeling of having finally made it. But as I stood at the center of the room, greeting friends and family, something uncomfortable began to settle in my chest. The laughter seemed too loud, the music too cheerful, as if something beneath the surface was starting to stir. I couldn't place it, but the sensation was real, like a weight pressing down on my chest, suffocating my breath. And then Derek appeared at my side, holding out a glass of wine. His smile was polite, even friendly, but I noticed the way his eyes lingered on me, as if searching for something, measuring me in a way that made me uneasy. "Here, Lillian," he said, his voice smooth. "A drink to celebrate the end of an era." I took the glass from him, though the moment felt off, a vague sense of unease crawling up my spine. The wine, deep red and sparkling in the candlelight, almost seemed to shimmer with something other than just celebration. I brought it to my lips, and as I did, I caught a strange, almost metallic scent. I froze. The faint smell lingered in the air, unsettling in a way I couldn't explain. A sharp, tangy scent that made my stomach churn. I tried to brush it off, convincing myself that I was simply imagining things. Too much champagne, perhaps. But as the conversation swirled around me, I could no longer ignore the discomfort creeping over me. I took a small sip, pretending to enjoy it, but the taste was off. Too sharp, too bitter. I quickly set the glass down on the table, my mind racing. Claire, sitting next to me, smiled warmly and picked up the glass without hesitation. "Thanks, Mom," she said, unaware of my unease. She took a sip, then another, and I couldn't help but watch her, my heart pounding in my chest. The evening continued with the same forced cheer, but my mind couldn't focus. Something felt wrong. Every laugh, every cheer, every toast seemed to echo in the pit of my stomach. I kept glancing at Derek, trying to read his face, but his calm expression betrayed nothing. It wasn't until hours later, as the evening was winding down, that everything changed. Claire suddenly collapsed, her body jerking violently as convulsions took over her. Screams erupted around the room as people rushed to her side, but all I could do was stare in shock. The world around me seemed to blur, the sound of frantic voices muffled as my heart hammered in my chest. Claire, my bright, strong daughter, was shaking uncontrollably on the floor, her eyes rolling back in her head. Derek remained eerily calm. His face, usually tight with ambition, now wore an expression I couldn't quite place. He was standing off to the side, as if watching from a distance. I rushed to Claire, trying to hold her still, my hands shaking as I cradled her head. My mind was spinning. How could this be happening? Someone called 911. I don't know who. All I could focus on was Claire, her face pale, her breathing shallow and erratic. The chaos around me felt distant, like I was in a dream. As we rushed to the hospital, Derek sat beside me in the car, his posture stiff, his eyes trained on the road ahead. I could feel his presence next to me, his every breath making the air feel heavier. "I've seen this before," Derek said casually, his tone too measured, too controlled. "A friend of mine from college had a similar reaction to something like this. It was a rare substance, a chemical, I think. It's not unheard of." I froze. How did he know that? The question lingered in my mind, gnawing at me, turning my blood cold. A rare substance? I had never heard of such a thing, and yet Derek spoke of it with such certainty as if he knew exactly what had happened. I looked at him, my gaze sharp. He met my eyes briefly, his face betraying no hint of guilt, no sign of concern. "How would you know that?" I asked, my voice trembling more than I cared to admit. Derek shrugged, his lips curling slightly. "It's just something I remember. My friend had a similar reaction in college. Weird stuff happens sometimes, but don't worry, Claire will be fine. She just needs medical attention." I nodded, but my mind was racing. I couldn't stop the thought from taking root. Was he trying to poison me? Was this his doing? Or had Claire simply made a mistake and drunk from my glass? The doubt, the uncertainty, settled heavily in my chest, and as we arrived at the hospital, my entire body seemed to lock in place. As doctors rushed Claire into the emergency room, I stood in the waiting area, my hands trembling. I could feel the eyes of everyone around me, but my mind was consumed with a single thought, one burning question that had taken over my every waking moment. Had Derek poisoned me? And had Claire just been an innocent victim? I didn't know the answer yet, but I was beginning to realize that the storm that had begun this night would not pass easily. It was only just beginning. The feeling of doubt, sharp, gnawing, relentless, was beginning to erode my trust, and there was no going back. The sterile scent of the hospital filled my nostrils as I paced in the waiting room, my thoughts a whirlwind. Claire was in a bed somewhere down the hall, unconscious but stable. She had been stabilized enough for the doctors to confirm one thing. She had been poisoned with a rare substance. The words echoed in my head, each syllable a hammer to the chest. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but I didn't know where to start. The world felt like it was spinning around me, but everything seemed to pause when Derek entered the waiting room. He looked as composed as ever, not a single strand of his perfectly styled hair out of place. His calmness, however, was unnerving. It was too calm for someone whose wife was in the ER, fighting for her life. He glanced at me and gave a tight smile. "She'll be fine, Lillian. It's just a rare substance. I'm sure it's nothing too serious." "How do you know that?" I snapped, perhaps a little too harshly. His casual dismissal of the situation made my stomach churn. Was he so indifferent to what had just happened to Claire? He raised an eyebrow, his expression unchanging. "Like I said, I knew someone in college who had a similar reaction. It's rare, but people recover from it." I froze. The same words he had said on the ride to the hospital. The same rare substance, the same lack of concern. The way he spoke of it was as if he were discussing a trivial matter, not the life-threatening situation we were in. He couldn't know this unless he had been involved in some way. The question gnawed at me, twisting in my gut. Claire's doctor appeared then, a kind man with a tired face, and his presence momentarily pulled me away from my thoughts. "Mrs. Pierce," he said, his voice grave but calm, "we've confirmed that your daughter was poisoned. It's a very rare substance, and the effects can be severe, but with prompt treatment, we believe she'll recover fully." I nodded, trying to keep my composure, but the storm inside me raged. "What is this substance?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "It's difficult to pinpoint exactly, but we're running tests. What's important is that we got her here in time." I barely heard him. My mind was focused entirely on Derek. How did he know about this rare substance? How did he know it would cause such a reaction? And why had he acted so calm about it? Something didn't add up. As the doctor left, I turned to Derek, my eyes narrowing. "You seem so sure of yourself, almost too sure." He met my gaze, his eyes steady. "I told you, Lillian, I'm just trying to be helpful. There's no reason to jump to conclusions." I wanted to scream at him, to shake him until he confessed whatever part he had in this, but I couldn't. Claire needed me to stay calm. She needed me to be strong for her. So I held my tongue, but inside, the suspicion that had been quietly growing was now a loud, insistent scream. Claire, when she finally regained consciousness a few hours later, seemed confused but stable. The moment she opened her eyes, I grabbed her hand, relief flooding through me. But even as I held her, I felt the tension between us, a distance I couldn't explain. Mom?" she asked weakly. Her voice hoarse. "What happened?" "You were poisoned," I said, my voice trembling with the weight of the words. "Do you remember anything? What happened at the dinner?" She blinked up at me, clearly struggling to focus. I don't remember much. I was fine, and then everything went dark. Her eyes drifted past me, to Derek, who had been standing quietly at the side of the room, watching with an unreadable expression. Derek approached, placing a hand gently on Claire's arm. "How are you feeling, sweetheart?" "I'm okay," Claire replied softly, her gaze lingering on him. I saw the trust in her eyes, the unquestioning faith. It made my blood run cold. I couldn't hold back any longer. I needed her to hear me, to understand that something was wrong. "Claire, I need to ask you something," I said, my voice shaking with the emotion I'd been holding back. "I think Derek might have been involved in this. The way he acted, the things he said, it's too much of a coincidence. He knew about the rare substance, Claire. How would he know about it unless—" Claire cut me off, her voice sharp with a protective edge. "Mom, you're seeing things that aren't there. Derek would never do something like that." I froze. The words stung more than I could have imagined. Claire, my own daughter, was defending him. "But Claire," I started, my voice breaking. "No," she interrupted firmly, her gaze turning hard. "I'm fine, okay? Derek didn't do anything. You're just overreacting." I could feel the room closing in on me, suffocating me. My own daughter, the one I had protected for so many years, was looking at me as if I were the one who had lost my mind. I had no words left. How could I explain the unease that had settled deep inside me? How could I make her see the danger? I tried to keep my voice calm, but I couldn't mask the hurt. "Just don't tell Derek anything about what I said, okay? Promise me you won't." Claire frowned, but nodded. "Of course. I'm not going to worry him about this. He's already been through enough tonight." I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake her, to make her see what I saw, but I couldn't. She was too far gone, too blinded by her love for Derek. And in that moment, a rift began to form between us, one I couldn't mend, no matter how hard I tried. Derek was winning. I didn't know how or why, but I felt the cold reality creeping in. This wasn't just about Claire's poisoning. It was about something much bigger, something darker, and I had no idea how deep this betrayal went. I was alone in this fight, and I was beginning to realize that my family, the people I had spent my entire life protecting, might be the very ones conspiring against me. The weight of the betrayal was suffocating, and I couldn't breathe. How could my daughter, the one I had loved and raised, be involved in something so dark? How could I have been so blind to Derek's true nature, and worse, to the fact that my own flesh and blood was standing beside him, conspiring against me? I had to know the truth. I had to uncover every last detail, even if it meant going behind everyone's back, even if it meant risking the destruction of everything I had built. With Claire still recovering in the hospital, I knew I had time, but I couldn't trust anyone, not even my own family. Derek was too smooth, too careful. Every time I looked at him, I saw the calm mask he wore, hiding the manipulative mind underneath. There was a coldness in his eyes that unsettled me, and no matter how much I tried to dismiss it, the nagging feeling in my gut told me I wasn't imagining it. I made a decision. I hired a private investigator. His name was John, and I had met him through a trusted acquaintance. He was discreet, efficient, and, most importantly, he was someone I could trust with my deepest suspicions. I gave him a few simple instructions: follow Derek, track his movements, and report back to me. Every day, every hour, if necessary. I needed to know what he was doing, who he was meeting, and why. It didn't take long for John to come back with disturbing news. Derek had been meeting with people from the business world, all of whom seemed to be involved in shady dealings, ones that didn't align with the company he was supposed to be running. But it wasn't just the business meetings that made my stomach turn. It was the secretive nature of everything. Derek was meeting these individuals in secluded places, out of the public eye, far away from any company business. The pieces of the puzzle I had been trying to ignore began to fit together in ways I wasn't prepared for. But the biggest shock came when John reported back with a revelation that shattered me to my core. Derek had been meeting with Jennifer. Jennifer, my daughter. The one I had always trusted more than anyone else, the one who had always been quiet and reserved, had been sneaking around with my son-in-law. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut, and I felt as if the ground had been pulled out from under me. Derek wasn't just trying to take control of the company, he was trying to take everything from me. And Jennifer, my own daughter, was helping him. I couldn't comprehend it at first. How had I missed this? How had I not seen the signs? Jennifer had always been the quiet one, the one who stayed in the background, never seeking the limelight. But now, it was clear that I had been wrong about her. She had been playing a game behind my back, and Derek had been her partner in it all along. I thought about the way Jennifer had always looked at me, always deferential, always eager to please. Was it all just a facade? Had she been harboring resentment all these years, quietly plotting her own rise to power? Or had Derek manipulated her, just as he had with me, pulling her into his web of deceit? I felt sick to my stomach. Jennifer had betrayed me in a way I couldn't even fathom, and yet I had never suspected her. I had trusted her. How could she do this to me? The pieces clicked into place with a chilling finality. Derek wasn't working alone. He had been using Jennifer as a pawn in his game, and she had been playing her part flawlessly. Together, they were a force to be reckoned with, powerful, manipulative, and completely willing to destroy everything I had worked for. The company, the family, everything. I spent the next few days in a fog, trying to process everything. I had no idea what to do. Confronting Jennifer directly felt impossible. How could I even look at her the same way after everything I had discovered? And Derek, my son-in-law, the one who I had welcomed into my family all those years ago, was now my enemy. I didn't know who I could trust anymore. But there was one thing I knew for sure. I wasn't going to let them win. I had spent too many years building this empire, too many years sacrificing for my family, only to have it torn apart by the very people I had loved and trusted the most. I wasn't going to go down without a fight. I called John again. "I need more," I said. "I need everything you can find on Jennifer. I need to know her every move, where she's been, who she's been meeting. I need to know how deep this goes." "Got it," John replied, his voice steady. "I'll get to work right away." As the days passed, the tension in the house became unbearable. Claire, though recovering, still seemed distant, unaware of the storm that was brewing just beyond her understanding. Derek continued his charade, acting as if nothing had changed, his calm demeanor never faltering. But inside, I was consumed with rage and disbelief. I couldn't let this go. I couldn't let them take everything from me. The investigation had only just begun, but already the truth was becoming more horrifying than I had ever imagined. Derek and Jennifer were working together, manipulating everything for their own gain. And as the pieces of their conspiracy started to fall into place, I realized that the betrayal was deeper than I had feared. I wasn't just fighting for the company anymore. I was fighting for my family, for everything I had ever believed in, and I was determined not to let them win. I didn't know how or when, but I would find a way to turn the tables. The storm was only beginning, and I was ready to face it head on. I couldn't keep pretending anymore. The truth was already crawling beneath the surface, and it was only a matter of time before it came out. But confronting Jennifer, my own flesh and blood, felt like an impossible task. It was my daughter. How had I not seen the lies she'd been weaving right in front of me? How could someone I raised, someone I loved, betray me in such a profound way? But the pieces were falling into place. Derek, with his smooth words and hidden ambitions, had been playing me. But it wasn't just him. It was Jennifer, too. She had been involved in everything from the beginning, quietly manipulating, scheming behind my back, a puppet master working with Derek in the shadows. And the worst part was that, until now, I hadn't even suspected her. I knew what I had to do. I called Jennifer into my study, the very place where we had shared so many family moments over the years. The room felt colder now, as if the very walls had witnessed too many secrets to stay warm. My pulse quickened as she walked in, her face holding that familiar, trusting expression I had seen so many times before. But tonight, I wasn't going to let myself be fooled. I was going to confront her with everything. "Jennifer, sit down," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "We need to talk." Her eyebrows furrowed slightly, her eyes widening with surprise. "What's going on, Mom? You seem upset." "Don't play innocent with me," I snapped. "I know what you've been doing, the meetings with Derek, the plans to take over the company, everything. I know about the affair, Jennifer, and I know you're not just manipulating him. You're trying to manipulate me. You've been trying to tear this family apart." For a moment, she just stared at me, her mouth slightly agape. Then she swallowed hard and tried to compose herself, her posture stiffening. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, her voice trembling. "This is insane, Mom. You're overreacting." I leaned forward, my gaze unwavering. Don't lie to me. I know about the affair. I know you're working with Derek, and I know you've been plotting behind my back. So stop pretending, Jennifer. This ends tonight. There was silence. A long, heavy silence that seemed to stretch for eternity. Finally, Jennifer exhaled sharply and looked down at her hands. You don't understand, she murmured. The words, soft and weary, caught me off guard. I expected her to deny everything, to throw more lies at me, but instead, she seemed resigned. What don't I understand? I asked, my voice low, filled with disbelief. Jennifer lifted her eyes to meet mine, and for the first time in a long time, I saw something raw in them, pain, anger, and regret, but also a strange sense of clarity, as if everything she had done had been leading her to this very moment. I've always lived in the shadow of Claire, she said, her voice barely a whisper. Always the second choice, always overlooked. You always favored her. Mom, she was the perfect daughter, the perfect employee, the perfect everything. And she paused, her throat tightening. I was nothing, just the quiet one, the one you never really saw, always left behind. I felt a stab of guilt, but it was quickly replaced with confusion. Jennifer, I never favored Claire. I never intended to hurt you. I loved you both equally. But Jennifer shook her head, a bitter smile curling on her lips. Maybe you didn't mean to, but it's how it felt. Claire had everything. And what did I have? Nothing. No one ever noticed me. No one ever cared. So I decided to do something about it. I opened my mouth to speak, but she cut me off, her voice growing stronger, more determined. I wasn't going to sit back anymore, Mom. I wasn't going to live in the shadow of your precious Claire. So I met Derek, and I realized he could give me everything I wanted. He was ambitious, he had connections, he had power, and I realized that together, we could take control of everything. Your company, your life, everything you've built. I recoiled, her words like a slap across my face. You're using Derek to take over the company? I asked, my voice trembling with a mix of rage and disbelief. Is that all this is about, Jennifer? Power? Ambition? She looked at me coldly, her expression hardening. It's not just about power, Mom. It's about finally being seen, finally being the one who matters. And now, I'm going to get what I deserve. I felt my stomach churn. I had spent so many years trying to protect my family, to build something solid, something lasting. And now my own daughter was part of the plot to tear it all down. But what shocked me even more was the lack of remorse in her voice. There was no regret, no apology, only cold determination. You're not just trying to take over the company, are you? I said quietly, the realization hitting me with full force. You're planning to get rid of me. You want to make sure Claire inherits everything, and then you'll eliminate her too, won't you? Jennifer didn't flinch. You don't understand, do you? Claire's weak. She's too nice, too naive. She won't be able to handle what's coming. But I will. And when I take control, everything will be mine. I sat there, stunned, my world crumbling around me. My own daughter, my flesh and blood, was planning to destroy me, to destroy everything I had worked for. The betrayal cut deeper than anything I had ever felt. I closed my eyes for a moment, trying to steady myself. The rage burned in my chest, but there was also something else, something I hadn't expected. I wasn't just angry at Jennifer. I was afraid of what she had become, afraid of the destruction she would bring if I didn't stop her. But there was one thing I knew for certain. I wasn't going to let her take everything from me. Not without a fight. I stood up slowly, my eyes locked on hers. You won't get away with this, Jennifer. I'll protect Claire, and I'll protect this company. You can't have it all. Jennifer stood as well, a mocking smile on her lips. You can try, Mom, but I'm already ahead of you. As she turned to leave, I felt the full weight of the moment. My daughter, my own flesh and blood, had betrayed me in the most profound way possible. But I wasn't done yet. I had a plan. I wasn't going to let Jennifer and Derek destroy everything I had worked for. I would stop them, no matter what it took. The conversation with Jennifer lingered in my mind, gnawing at me with every passing hour. Her words, cold, calculating, had torn through the layers of my trust, revealing the depths of her ambition. But now, I had no choice but to act. I couldn't just sit back and let her destroy everything I'd built. I had to understand how deep this went, how far she had gone to secure her place. I turned my attention to the company's finances. I had always kept a careful eye on the numbers, but now I needed to scrutinize every transaction, every report. Nothing could slip past me. Jennifer had already shown she was capable of manipulation, and I needed to ensure she hadn't been playing me at a much larger scale. Days blurred into nights as I pored over documents, comparing financial statements, invoices, and transfer records. I felt my pulse quicken as I uncovered the first signs of something far darker than I had imagined. There, buried deep within the company's accounts, were multiple transfers, large sums of money that had been moved into accounts I didn't recognize, accounts that weren't linked to the company. It didn't take long to trace them back to Jennifer. She had been siphoning money for months, diverting funds into secret accounts without anyone, especially Claire, knowing. The scale of it was staggering, and it became clear. Jennifer had been planning this for far longer than I had realized. Her ambitions weren't just about the company's future. They were about securing her own wealth, her own power, and her own control. I felt sick as I continued digging. Jennifer had acted with such precision, such care, hiding her tracks, manipulating every financial document, every decision, to ensure that her piece of the company grew. The numbers were all there, in black and white, but the betrayal still felt like a punch to my gut. The further I dug, the more I saw just how far Jennifer was willing to go. It wasn't just about resentment anymore, or about feeling overlooked. It wasn't vanity or pride driving her. It was an unrelenting desire for power. She was no longer my daughter. She was a force to be reckoned with, and she would stop at nothing to get what she wanted. But what chilled me the most was realizing just how much she had already gained. I had been so focused on Derek, so consumed with his influence over Claire, that I had missed what was right in front of me. Jennifer had been using Derek, yes, but she was the mastermind. She had been pulling the strings all along. I couldn't waste any more time. Every moment I spent chasing shadows, trying to piece together the truth. Jennifer and Derek were moving closer to their goal. The company was at risk, and so was Claire. I knew I had to act, fast, but the weight of the situation bore down on me. Every move I made, every step I took, had to be calculated. Jennifer and Derek had been operating in the shadows, pulling strings, working with precision. I couldn't afford to make a mistake. The stakes were higher than I had ever imagined. It wasn't just about stopping them anymore. It was about protecting the family I had left. And the deeper I looked into Jennifer's secret dealings, the more I realized that the battle I was fighting wasn't just for the company. It was for my family's future. I had to be smart. I had to outmaneuver them at their own game. The truth was finally beginning to take shape. Every detail, every hidden move Jennifer had made was now clear to me. What I had initially believed to be mere ambition had grown into something far more sinister. She wasn't just aiming for a bigger slice of the company. She wanted it all. She had devised a plan to eliminate not just me, but Claire as well. I sat in the quiet of my study, the documents spread out before me. I reviewed the evidence once more, the weight of it pressing on my chest. Jennifer hadn't just been after the company. She had been playing a long game, and I had been blind to it. Derek, I realized, was nothing more than a pawn in her game. He had been used, manipulated into thinking he was part of the grand scheme. He was a tool, nothing more. But Jennifer, she was the mastermind behind everything. She had carefully orchestrated her moves, positioning herself to take control while eliminating any threats along the way. First me, then Claire. I couldn't breathe as I pieced it all together. The transfers of money, the quiet meetings with Derek, the meetings with people who had nothing to do with the company, the affairs, the lies. It was all part of her plan. She had been using every angle to secure her place at the top, all while pretending to be the loving daughter, the quiet one who could never harm a soul. But now I saw it for what it truly was. Jennifer wasn't just angry or resentful. She wasn't simply trying to carve out a space for herself in the world. She was desperate for power, and she was willing to destroy anyone who stood in her way. The company was just a means to an end. I was the obstacle, and Claire was next. I sat back in my chair, my head swimming with the implications of what I had just uncovered. How had it come to this? How had my own flesh and blood, the daughter I had loved and nurtured, become this ruthless, cold person? I thought about all the moments we shared, all the times I had tried to be there for her, to guide her, and I couldn't reconcile the girl I had raised with the woman she had become. Anger surged within me, but it was quickly overshadowed by an overwhelming sense of desolation. I had trusted Jennifer. I had believed in her. How could she have betrayed me like this? I ran a hand through my hair, trying to steady myself. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about Claire. The company had always been my legacy, but Claire, she was my heart. I had fought my entire life to protect her, to give her everything I never had. And now, it was all at risk. Jennifer wasn't just after my company. She was after Claire, too. I stood up abruptly, pacing the room. The storm was growing, and I had no choice but to face it head on. I couldn't let Jennifer succeed. I couldn't let her tear everything I had built apart, especially not for her own greed. But the thought of confronting her, of confronting my own daughter, made my stomach twist. I had trusted her. I had believed she would be the one to carry on my legacy, the one to take over the company when I stepped down. But now, it was clear. She didn't want to carry it forward. She wanted to own it, and everyone else be damned. I knew what I had to do. I had to stop her, but I couldn't do it alone. I needed to confront Jennifer and Derek, expose their lies, and make sure Claire was protected. But I knew it wouldn't be easy. Jennifer had already shown she was willing to do whatever it took to get what she wanted. She was relentless, and I couldn't underestimate her, mate. With all the pieces in place, I began to make my plan. The first step was clear. I needed to confront Jennifer. I needed to show her that I knew what she was doing, to let her know that I was no longer the naive mother she could manipulate. But as the reality of what I was about to do set in, I felt a strange mixture of emotions. My anger was strong, yes, but it was tempered with something I couldn't quite define, an aching sorrow, a deep, unshakable sadness. This wasn't just a battle for the company anymore. It was a fight for my family, and as much as I hated to admit it, I didn't know if I could win. I had never imagined that my own children would become the very ones I had to fight against. But now, as I looked at the path ahead, I knew there was no other choice. I had to protect Claire. I had to protect everything I had worked for. And if it meant fighting against my own daughter, then so be it. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. This was it. The battle was coming, and it would be more difficult than anything I had ever faced. But I would face it, no matter the cost. The time had come to stop Jennifer, and I wasn't going to let her win. As I continued to unravel the web of lies Jennifer had spun around me, another realization hit me like a ton of bricks. The game had grown more complex, and my youngest son, Ethan, was now a player in it, a pawn in Jennifer's scheme. I had always believed Ethan to be the most loyal of my children, the one who kept to himself, stayed out of the corporate battles, and focused on his own life. But now, watching him closely, I saw how easily he had been drawn into Jennifer's machinations. It began subtly. Ethan, who had always kept a distance from the family business, started showing up more often at gatherings, offering opinions on matters he had never cared about before. At first, I thought it was just a phase. Perhaps he was finally starting to take an interest. But as time went on, it became clear that Jennifer had something to do with it. She had been feeding him promises, manipulating him with words that appealed to his desire for recognition, for power. She had convinced him that if he helped her take control of the company, he would be rewarded. His own stake, a portion of the inheritance, a seat at the table where he could finally be important. The thought of Ethan, my son, being pulled into Jennifer's web of deceit was more than I could bear. He had always been the one who seemed to have the least ambition, the least desire for power. How could he